There's something curious about brilliant people. It seems everyone tends to imagine an almost mythical creature, always surrounded by incredibly complex equations, making unbelievable predictions, holding a piece of chalk in a dark room while solving cosmic mysteries as if deciding on the flavor of their lunch. But in the real world, the story is far less cinematic, and at the same time, much more interesting. Genius, contrary to what some say, isn't born with its own light or some celestial certificate. It manifests itself in small gestures, unnoticed habits, natural attitudes that go unnoticed even by those who perform them. And that's precisely what makes the topic so fascinating. Extremely intelligent people almost never realize they are different, because what they do effortlessly is exactly what reveals the strength of their minds. And here enters Richard Feynman, a physicist known for dismantling myths about what it means to think well. He didn't fit the traditional mold of the serious academic. On the contrary, he laughed loudly, made jokes, played the drums, solved problems as if he were telling stories. And yet, he was able to explain complex phenomena like few others. He liked to remind us that intelligence has no face, no pose, and certainly doesn't follow a script. No matter how many times they try to fit genius into a stereotype, it always finds a way to slip through the cracks. When most people imagine someone highly intelligent, they picture someone formal, disciplined, bothered by any kind of irregularity, almost as if their brain functioned in military mode. However, when we observe truly intellectually remarkable individuals, we perceive something very different. They possess a spontaneity that is disconcerting. Often they seem distracted, other times they seem too busy with something no one notices. Sometimes they are interested in subjects that don't fit with their main field. Other times they solve something complex with a simplicity that is almost irritating. And all this happens without fanfare, without any intention to impress, without even noticing that they are displaying above-average abilities. It is precisely this naturalness that sets the tone for this introduction. Because the goal here is not to exalt superpowers, nor to transform Feynman into a divine entity of physics. The goal is to reveal behaviors that go unnoticed, almost innocent attitudes, mental movements that seem too simple to be considered extraordinary, but which in essence constitute the foundation of true intelligence. Throughout this video, we will explore 7 traits that appear spontaneously in extremely intelligent people, traits that Feynman expressed all the time, even when he thought he was just having fun. Before listing these behaviors, it's worth highlighting one thing. Real intelligence isn't a show. There's no background music, no dramatic soundtrack, no blown-out lighting or slow motion to emphasize the moment. Sometimes it all happens in a seemingly banal conversation. Other times it emerges from a casual comment. In certain situations it appears in the simple gesture of asking a question that no one has thought of before. Many of the most impressive characteristics of history's great minds are discreet. They are spontaneous habits, actions so natural that the person themselves doesn't even realize they are doing something unusual. And there lies the delightful irony of this theme. While many spend their lives trying to appear more intelligent, speaking in a complicated way, using technical terms, citing authors they've barely read, those who truly have a sharp mind simply live, ask questions, explore, laugh, test, take things apart, reconsider ideas, and continue doing so without imagining there's anything special about it. Feynman was a master at this. He was curious in an almost childlike way. He questioned everything. He sought clarity above approval, and he often refused to appear serious just to meet academic expectations. His genius lay not in appearing brilliant, but in acting with authenticity and freedom, even when it went against established norms. So, in this introduction, the invitation is clear. Forget for a moment the stereotypical image of the impeccable sage. Forget the aura of mystery that cinema likes to create, and prepare to observe simple, accessible, and surprising behaviors. In the next few minutes, you will realize that true intelligence is not born with glamour. It springs from natural, spontaneous, and often invisible attitudes to the common eye. If you want to find out if you exhibit any of these behaviors without realizing it, comment below. What attitude of yours has caught someone's attention, even when it seemed normal to you? Unusual observation. One of the most intriguing traits of highly intelligent people is how they perceive things that go unnoticed by most. It's not something forced, planned, or part of some intellectual ritual. It arises spontaneously, naturally, almost like an automatic reflex. While most people look at an object, a situation, or a conversation and see only the obvious, these sharp minds capture nuances, notice irregularities, identify patterns, perceive small inconsistencies that escape ordinary eyes. It's not about obsession, but about sensitivity. A curious, active, attentive sensitivity, always ready to capture something that no one else has seen. Richard Feynman was a classic example of this. He grew up taking apart everything he came across: radios, toys, machines, things that simply seemed interesting. He didn't do it because someone told him to, nor because he needed to relearn how to put things back together. He did it because he wanted to understand what was behind what everyone uses without thinking. This willingness to look beyond the surface marked his way of thinking. When he saw a physical phenomenon, he didn't just see the phenomenon. He saw connections, causes, hidden clues. When he observed a seemingly convincing explanation, he noticed the details that didn't add up, the neglected parts, the gaps that no one dared to admit. This ability to notice what is missing, more than what is evident, transformed his thinking into something unique. But this type of perception isn't limited to physics geniuses. Extremely intelligent people, in any field, tend to understand their environment differently. They see context as a set of signals. They perceive expressions, tones of voice, changes in behavior, small irregularities, almost invisible discrepancies. They are always on the lookout, not because they live in tension, but because their minds function like radars, capturing information that most consider irrelevant. Sometimes this ability is even bothersome, not because it's bad, but because it's too intense. It's as if they are constantly reading the world in high resolution while others watch it in low definition. This sharp gaze often evokes two types of reaction: admiration or bewilderment. Some find it impressive how quickly these people identify problems, anticipate errors, suggest adjustments, and find unexpected solutions. On the other hand, there are also those who think they go overboard, exaggerate, and complicate the simple. The truth is that, for a truly awakened mind, almost nothing is simple. The simple is only that which has not yet been deeply analyzed. And that is why these people see beyond, because they do not accept things as given. They want to understand. They want to see what sustains the structure of what they observe. This refined observation isn't necessarily conscious. Often they notice something strange without being able to immediately explain why it seems wrong. It's a silent unease, a curious feeling of something here doesn't fit, which can turn into a question, an investigation, or in the case of someone like Feynman, a complete experiment. He loved testing his hypotheses. He wasn't content with perceiving, he wanted to verify. He mixed practice with intuition, experimentation with logic. The attentive gaze was only the first step. From there, a whole process of discovery began. And here's something interesting. This skill isn't limited to the technical field. In conversations, highly intelligent people also pick up on nuances. They notice inconsistencies in discourse, emotional subtleties, hidden contradictions, details that reveal more than the words themselves. They don't need to make an effort, it simply happens. While many listen to the content, they listen to the context. While many pay attention to what was said, they pay attention to what wasn't. It's a type of perception that transforms simple interactions into veritable maps of information. It's common for these people to have a reputation for being enigmatic or different, not because they try to be mysterious, but because they see the world from an angle that's difficult to explain. When they try to share their observations, sometimes they sound too complicated. Other times they seem to be seeing things that don't exist. But over time, it becomes evident that this unusual sensitivity allows them to identify patterns before others, predict consequences, correct mistakes, develop more consistent projects, find creative solutions, avoid problems, and understand people more deeply. The most curious thing is that this ability is almost never perceived as extraordinary by the person themselves. For them, this way of observing the world is simply the natural way of thinking. Just like breathing, eating, or walking, noticing details is simply part of how the mind works. They don't even realize how unusual it is. And that's where the beauty of this trait lies. It's a powerful, yet silent quality, brilliant yet discreet, transformative yet subtle. If you've ever noticed something that no one else did and it made you think, was it just me who saw that? Comment below. Maybe you have that ability and never realized it. You doubts that, you're bother. There's a recurring trait in extremely intelligent people that, to many, might seem like stubbornness, excessive insistence, or even nagging. But in reality, it's an essential characteristic, the inability to accept superficial answers. Whenever something doesn't make sense, an internal unease arises that's difficult to ignore. It doesn't matter if everyone around seems satisfied with the explanation, if the matter should have already been closed, if it went unnoticed by most. The truly awakened mind feels a kind of mental itch, a silent discomfort, an inner call that says, something's wrong here. And until it finds a clear, coherent, satisfactory answer, this discomfort won't go away. This is where Richard Feynman stood out in an almost comical way. He didn't accept anything just because. He wouldn't swallow vague explanations, complicated terms used to hide ignorance, or justifications that seemed more like smoke than substance. For him, something could only be considered understood when it could be explained simply. If someone tried to confuse things, he would dismantle the explanation with a strategic question, and then another, and another. This habit created discomfort in those accustomed to appearing intelligent without necessarily understanding the subject. Feynman didn't do this to humiliate. He did it because he couldn't stand the feeling that something was poorly resolved. This discomfort, which to some seems excessive, is a sign of genuine intelligence. Minds like these don't know how to rest on almost. They can't close the subject while they realize something is missing. It's as if there's a small light continuously blinking in the back of their consciousness, and this light only goes out when understanding becomes complete. That's why very intelligent people ask questions that sound strange or even inconvenient. They ask the obvious. They question what no one has questioned. They revisit topics already considered resolved. They ask for examples. They want to see the steps of the reasoning. They demand clarity. Not because they doubt the whole world, but because they need coherence to breathe. And the most curious thing is, often these questions arise even before they realize it. The discomfort comes first. The rationalization comes later. It's as if the brain detects a logical flaw even before formulating the criticism. The feeling appears, the question arises, the debate begins, and while others think it's just fussiness, for this restless mind it's a matter of intellectual health. If it's not resolved, the mind won't rest. It's common for this behavior to be interpreted as arrogance. After all, when someone insists so much on understanding, others may think that person is trying to challenge or belittle the person who explained. But in fact, it's the opposite. Deep curiosity is accompanied by humility. Very intelligent people know they can be wrong. That's why they question. They know they don't understand everything. That's why they ask. They know that poorly formed answers can lead to bad conclusions. That's why they persist. The pursuit of clarity is not vanity. It's a commitment to the truth. Feynman had a famous quote about this. You should avoid fooling yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. This thought sums it all up. Intelligent people know that the brain loves shortcuts, loves quick simplifications, loves the feeling of, I get it. And that's exactly why they doubt. Doubt is not a sign of intellectual weakness. It's a defense mechanism against delusions. Furthermore, this sensitivity to inconsistencies produces a very powerful skill, perceiving contradictions before others. In conversations, projects, discussions, planning, behavioral analysis, or any other context, people with this trait quickly identify logical flaws. This discomfort acts as an early warning. While many only notice the problem when it explodes, these people detect it even before it manifests. Another characteristic linked to this trait is the habit of verifying. Highly intelligent people don't fully trust memories. They don't trust intuition without backing. They don't trust statements without evidence. They research, they review, they test, they read, they confront. They do this not out of chronic distrust, but because they know that the human mind is fallible. Doubt is a tool, not an obstacle. At a certain level, this type of mind lives in a continuous cycle of questions. When it finds a satisfactory answer, a new question arises. When it solves one problem, another is born. When it understands a concept, it realizes that there are others hidden behind it. This does not cause frustration. On the contrary, it fuels enthusiasm. Doubt is the spark. Curiosity is the fuel. Understanding is the reward. And perhaps the most intriguing thing is this. Those who live like this don't realize they are different. For them, questioning is as natural as breathing. The discomfort with incomplete answers is simply a daily part of life. The world seems full of loose ends pressing the mind to tie them together. Therefore, asking questions is inevitable. And this inevitability is what reveals true intellectual power. If you've ever felt that silent unease when someone gave you a vague answer, comment below. Maybe that's one of your greatest strengths. A genuine passion for learning. There is a type of interest that doesn't depend on obligation, diplomas, social pressure, or the promise of reward. It's a natural, almost visceral impulse that makes certain people delve into varied subjects with genuine enthusiasm. This impulse isn't born out of necessity, it's born out of enchantment. It's the purest curiosity, the kind that isn't tamed by external demands. Extremely intelligent people possess this inner flame that constantly pushes them toward knowledge. It's not just about liking to learn. It's about feeling pleasure in the process, feeling satisfaction in the act of discovering something new, even when that something has no immediate use. It's an unpretentious love for understanding things. Richard Feynman was the perfect embodiment of this behavior. He dedicated himself intensely to physics, but he also played the bongos, studied biology, dabbled in art, disassembled devices, tried to decipher codes, investigated human behavior, and explored any subject that sparked his attention. There were no rigid boundaries in how he viewed learning. For Feynman, anything that aroused curiosity had value. If something seemed interesting, that was reason enough to discover more. This freedom to explore different areas is a striking characteristic of truly brilliant minds. They don't worry about appearing disciplined within a single field. They want to learn for pure pleasure, even if the topic seems random to others. This spontaneous passion contrasts with how many people relate to learning. Most only study when there is a clear obligation, a test, a job, a promotion, a professional requirement. But extremely intelligent people function differently. The stimulus comes from within, not from without. They watch documentaries for no reason. They get lost in articles. They spend hours reading about strange phenomena. They collect ideas. They ask questions that open new doors. They follow the trail to the point that their own curiosity allows. And when they exhaust a topic, they move on to the next without guilt. They don't need to justify this transition. They just need to feel that there is something new waiting to be discovered. This behavior also reveals an important emotional characteristic. For these people, learning is a form of enjoyment. While many seek distraction in passive entertainment, intelligent people enjoy absorbing knowledge. This doesn't mean they are detached from reality or averse to leisure. It means that, for them, reasoning, exploring, and understanding is pleasurable. Reading about something complex becomes as satisfying as watching a movie. Conducting a thought experiment is as stimulating as playing a game. Finding an elegant explanation for a phenomenon is as rewarding as receiving praise. The joy lies not only in the content learned, but in the mental journey that leads to understanding. Furthermore, this passion for learning generates a curious cycle. The more a person discovers, the more they realize the vastness of the universe they still don't know. Instead of feeling frustrated, they feel motivated. The unknown doesn't frighten, it invites. Highly intelligent people don't feel inferior in the face of the vastness of knowledge. They feel inspired. Awareness of their own limitations is precisely what drives them. That's why they continue studying, because they know they will never know everything. And this perception, far from generating anxiety, fuels enthusiasm. Another interesting aspect is that these people rarely learn in a conventional way. They don't follow rigid scripts. They don't rely exclusively on formal methods. They don't wait for instructions. They create their own paths, build their own mental maps, and mix different areas. Their learning is organic, flexible, and intuitive. Often they start studying one topic and end up on a completely different one, but always connecting ideas that, to other people, would seem disconnected. This ability to make unexpected associations makes learning even more enjoyable. And finally, there's the emotional connection to error. Extremely intelligent people aren't afraid of making mistakes while learning. On the contrary, they see error as part of the process. Feynman loved experimenting, even when he wasn't sure of the outcome. He knew that learning doesn't just come from understanding, but also from testing, trying, and occasional failure. This lightheartedness towards error allows for deeper and more continuous learning. Instead of feeling judged for not knowing something, these people feel motivated to learn more. This willingness to learn makes life more vibrant. Each new piece of information is like opening a window to another place. Each new question is an opportunity to expand one's understanding. Each new discovery creates a real sense of satisfaction. And all this happens without them realizing how much it sets them apart. For most, studying is an obligation. For them, it's emotional nourishment. It's fuel for thought. It's genuine fun. CTA. If there's a subject you study simply because it fascinates you, comment below. I want to know what topic ignites that flame in you. Ability to simplify. There's a curious phenomenon that occurs when someone truly understands a subject. Complexity begins to lose its intimidating air. Concepts cease to seem mysterious. Details begin to organize themselves mentally in a natural way, and ideas start to fit together like pieces of a puzzle that finally make sense. Extremely intelligent people do this without realizing it. They transform confusion into clarity with such naturalness that often observers think they've oversimplified. But the secret lies precisely in their profound understanding. Only those who truly see the foundations, the hidden mechanisms, and the essential connections can remove the excess and leave only what matters. Richard Feynman was the personification of this ability. He had an almost disconcerting talent for taking a difficult subject, whether in physics, biology, mathematics, or engineering, and explaining it so clearly that even children understood. Not because he simplified the content, but because he intelligently reorganized the information. He said that if you can't explain something in simple words, then you don't really understand it. This phrase became one of the cornerstones of his methodology, not just as a teaching, but as a daily practice. Before considering himself prepared to speak on a subject, he would write the explanation as if he were teaching someone with no prior knowledge. This process revealed flaws in understanding, unclear points, gaps that needed to be filled. When everything flowed naturally, he knew he had reached the correct level of comprehension. This ability to simplify has nothing to do with superficiality. On the contrary, it demands depth. It's like disassembling a large, complex mechanism and reducing it to its fundamental engine. While many hide behind technical terms to appear wiser, truly intelligent people do the opposite. They remove the smoke, cut the excess, eliminate the noise. Intelligence here lies not in the quantity of difficult words used, but in the ability to convey the essential without distortion. This ability stems from a combination of factors. First, there is a natural curiosity that leads these people to seek the root of things. They are not satisfied with ready-made definitions. They want to know why. They want to see what underpins the concept. They want to touch the foundation. Second, they possess an enormous capacity for synthesis. They can take various scattered elements, filter out what really makes a difference, and reorganize everything in a logical and accessible way. Third, there is cognitive empathy. They can put themselves in the place of someone who knows nothing and imagine which points will need to be explained for complete understanding. When this skill is applied, everything changes. A difficult concept ceases to seem inaccessible. A theoretical problem loses its intimidating tone. A complex analysis, which seemed impossible to follow, gains clear outlines. And this creates an almost magical effect. The listener feels that they are truly learning. They don't feel small. They don't feel stupid. They don't feel excluded. On the contrary, they feel invited to understand something important in a welcoming way. This is rare, and precisely because it is rare, it is so valuable. This talent also appears in everyday conversations. Highly intelligent people, when discussing ideas, go straight to the essential point. They don't get lost in irrelevant details. They don't create unnecessary detours. They don't construct long speeches to hide uncertainties. They seek the central truth, and upon finding it, they make everything more transparent to those around them. This clarity can even be unsettling at times. In environments where many prefer beautiful speeches to solid thoughts, someone who simplifies too much seems to threaten the apparent depth of others. But deep down, everyone recognizes the usefulness of this skill. Another powerful aspect of simplification is its ability to generate genuine memorization. When something is explained clearly, the brain understands it better and retains it more easily. That's why intelligent people can teach well effortlessly. Their understanding is so profound that teaching comes naturally. They don't need to memorize lines. They simply organize what already makes sense internally. And unintentionally, they also inspire. The act of simplifying shows that knowledge can be accessible, that difficult subjects can be understood, that learning doesn't have to be painful. This creates a virtuous circle. The more clarity they offer, the more people feel motivated to learn. The most curious thing is that for those who possess this ability, it doesn't even seem special. The person only speaks in the way they understand it. They only organize their ideas as their own brain does. They only transmit what is already clear internally. But for the receiver, this simplicity becomes a gift, quick and direct access to content that seemed impossible. If you've ever heard someone explain something complex in such a clear way that everything finally made sense, comment below. I want to know which explanation opened your mind. At a certain point, when a feeling of emptiness seemed to occupy every corner of my thoughts, something unexpected began to happen. It wasn't a warning, nor a dramatic sign, just a gentle, almost discreet impression that settled in, like someone approaching slowly, so as not to frighten. This impression brought the idea that no movement within human experience is random. Even episodes that seem useless carry hidden utility. Behind events that hurt, there is a mysterious chain of events that leads to new understandings, although we only perceive this when we are already far from the most painful stage. Thus, by observing events that previously seemed disconnected, perception began to organize everything differently. Scattered memories gained unexpected meaning. Old conversations emerged with new interpretations, and seemingly simple encounters revealed a profound impact. At many moments, understanding didn't come with logical explanations. It simply settled in lightly, as if it had always been there. And by accepting this new way of seeing, it became evident that paths were forming while nothing seemed to be happening. The silence, so unsettling before, now showed its value. Within it, answers were born that wouldn't appear amidst the noise. As the days passed, it became clearer that significant transformations begin from within. They rarely emerge in a grand way, and are often not accompanied by strong emotions. They can appear during ordinary activities, such as tidying something at home, taking a leisurely walk, or watching the sky as time goes by. It is in these moments that profound ideas emerge and reorganize difficult feelings. The heart, once heavy, finds another way to beat when it realizes it no longer needs to fight against what it cannot control. And when this acceptance happens, a new tranquility arises, not as resignation, but as maturity. There was also the discovery that what seemed like loss was actually transforming into space. Space for different attitudes, new relationships, new perspectives. When something goes away, it leaves behind fertile ground that, little by little, begins to receive invisible seeds. Many of these seeds take time to develop, and there is no way to hasten this process. What is destined to flourish will emerge when it is ready, without pressure, without anxiety. This realization brought a rare relief, as it showed that life has its own rhythms, independent of human urgencies. Amidst this understanding, a feeling of constant companionship arose, not a physical presence, but something that envelops, sustains, and encourages. Something that wipes away tears before they even fall, that brings calm when thoughts begin to race, that whispers hope in silent moments. This presence imposes nothing, demands no proof, judges no weaknesses. It simply holds, guides, and strengthens. And when this invisible force makes itself felt, the journey takes on a different texture. Stumbles cease to signify incapacity and begin to represent learning. Each fall reveals new angles of one's own heart. The journey, however, did not become perfect. Difficulties continued to arise. Worry still appeared. Some nights remained long. But all of this was faced differently. Now there was a conviction that there was no abandonment, that no tear was wasted, that every silent prayer was received with attention. The certainty of direction began to solidify, even when it was not possible to see the destination clearly. This renewed confidence allowed one to move forward with less fear and more serenity. From this change, it became possible to reinterpret old pains. They ceased to be signs of failure and became testimonies of resilience. Scars gained new meaning. Instead of showing weakness, they revealed the capacity to live despite everything. Each mark told a story of overcoming. Each difficult memory carried a disguised lesson that now made sense. This recognition did not erase traumatic experiences, but transformed their weight into wisdom. With a heart more willing to move forward, it became easier to see beauty in simple details. The dawn seemed different. Everyday conversations gained value. Small gestures became precious. This new sensitivity brought a willingness to be grateful even for things that had previously gone unnoticed. And by cultivating gratitude for small things, inner strength grew naturally, without forced effort. All of this allowed her to understand that no moment is isolated. Every event is linked to a greater purpose, even when logic fails to keep up. What seemed like confusion was, in fact, construction. What seemed like delay was preparation. What seemed like silence was an answer in formation. By accepting this truth, the soul found safe haven. There was a time when everything seemed undefined, as if every decision was too heavy and every choice carried risks that the heart no longer had the energy to face. In that restless interval where nothing seemed to fit together, an unexpected realization emerged. Even when everything seems still, something greater continues to guide every detail. This silent, firm, and discreet guidance began to be noticed in seemingly ordinary situations, in casual encounters, in messages that arrived at the exact moment, in memories that reappeared with a new interpretation. It was as if an invisible thread was aligning what had previously seemed chaotic. As the days passed, it became evident that no journey happens without direction. Even when the steps are short or hesitant, there is a gentle impulse leading to places that cannot yet be understood. The curious thing is that this impulse doesn't force, doesn't push, doesn't demand haste. It merely guides, offering small confirmations along the way. Thus, that constant feeling of uncertainty began to lose its power. In its place arose something more solid, like an internal axis capable of maintaining firmness even amidst doubts. This inner transformation didn't happen immediately. It was built gradually, as old situations were revisited in a new light. What once seemed like injustice now revealed hidden lessons. Relationships that had ended made it clear they had served their purpose. Missed opportunities revealed they wouldn't have brought peace. And even painful failures gained special meaning by showing necessary boundaries. Each memory rearranged itself as if being placed back on its proper shelf, revealing a coherence that hadn't been seen before. From this, a transformative understanding emerged. Nothing truly valuable is lost when placed in the hands of something greater. What slips away is what wouldn't be missed. What remains is what sustains. What arrives is what was reserved. This realization brought profound relief, eliminating the need to control everything, monitor everything, anticipate everything. It became possible to rest without guilt, knowing that there is an order at work even where there seems to be disorder. Alongside these thoughts, a quiet force began to manifest itself. It wasn't euphoria or excessive enthusiasm, but a constant energy that encouraged moving forward even without complete answers. This force made previously heavy responsibilities lighter, previously suffocating worries bearable, previously daunting challenges become opportunities for inner growth. There was no disappearance of difficulties, but a new capacity to face them. Another striking point in this process was the realization that hope doesn't need to be grand to be powerful. It just needs to be genuine. A single positive expectation, even a small one, is capable of illuminating several areas of life at once. This small light served as a guide during cloudy days, reminding us that no dark scenario is definitive. And, as this inner light strengthened, external attitudes began to change. Reactions became calmer, choices wiser, words more careful. At many moments there was a feeling that everything was being rearranged for something greater. Situations that previously generated anxiety were now faced with serenity, because there was a silent conviction that there was purpose even in the most confusing moments. This confidence allowed one to abandon fears that previously dominated thought, opening space for a new courage, a courage that doesn't shout but sustains, that doesn't impose itself but guides. This new phase also brought an invitation to observe one's own life more broadly, to realize that each person who arrives has a specific role. Each word received has particular importance. Each door that closes protects from something that would not be good. Nothing is wasted. Even painful situations function as instruments of growth. And when this understanding takes hold, it is impossible to continue seeing life as a random sequence of episodes. Everything connects in some way. With a more attentive heart, it became easier to recognize signs of care in simple events. Unexpected help, timely advice, comfort that arrives unasked. These small gestures show that no one walks alone, even when silence seems to prevail. There is a constant, invisible protection present in every detail. This presence does not eliminate difficulties, but it offers support to overcome them. Amidst this renewed scenario, one certainty has strengthened. What is being prepared is greater than what has been lost. Possibilities are emerging that cannot yet be seen. Paths are forming where there were once walls. Promises are being aligned with perfect timing. Nothing is delayed. Nothing is out of place. Nothing is being forgotten. Everything is being conducted with precision. Upon realizing this, the soul found true rest. Not a momentary rest, but a tranquility that extends to every area of life. This peace does not depend on external circumstances, but is born from an inner trust, built day after day. And with this trust, it became possible to look to the future with positive expectations, knowing that what is in store will surpass any pain experienced.